Welcome back to Floki's Models. Today we're going to be building Dragon's German pioneer troops with assault raft, so stay tuned to see how we got to here. There was not many parts in this kit, just 3 small trees and a piece of string, but everything is molded very well. I start by removing all the parts and separating them into groups. Right here I'm gluing the 2 main parts of the raft together. Then I clean the seam up after the glue dries. The rope loops are then added next. Followed up by the assembling of the figures. Starting on building the base, I took a piece of 1/2-inch plywood cut to 6 by 6 inches and a scrap piece of foam. I drew on what I wanted the bank to look like and cut that out. I melted the edges with a lighter so they could keep their shape. Then I took a piece of foam board and cut the bake shape into it, then cut it to fit the base. I removed the paper from just one side of it. The sides of the base are made from 1/2-inch by 1.5-inch oak. I fill in the gap with some superglue first. Then I superglue the foam pieces into that. Using Mod Podge, I glue in some rocks and pebbles that I took out of the driveway. They all got to wash in Dawn dish soap first. Didn't have a plan on placement, just whatever looked good at the time. Using scenic glue that is a mix of 40% Mod Podge, 40% water, and 20% isopropyl alcohol, I use it to fix this Woodland Scenics ballast to the base. Not sure of the product number, I've had this for a good 7 or 8 years now. And using more scenic glue to make sure that everything is locked in place good. I'm going to use some of this Woodland Scenics blended turf to make moss on the top of some of these rocks. I don't want to add too much, just here and there. Moving back to the figures, I start by drilling a hole into 1 foot of each figure. I then superglue a piece of wire into that hole. Then using an old prescription bottle that also has a hole drilled in the lid, I feed the wire through the hole and then hold everything together with a piece of blue tack underneath. This will give a good handle to hold onto while painting the figure. Using a 50-50 mix of Vallejo German Grey and Luftwaffe uniform, makes this nice blue-gray rubber color that the raft will be painted with. I think the color looks pretty convincing. Using Vallejo chocolate brown, the entire bank will be painted with this, so none of that green will be showing through. This piece of styrene tubing, I'm not sure exactly what size it is, will be used to hold the raft up. It won't be seen when finished. And this is how it's gonna set. All the wood pieces are gonna get painted a 50-50 mix of Vallejo beige brown and orange brown. On to painting the figures. I'll be using Andrea Color flesh set for this, starting with base 1. Using a number 1 brush, the entire face gets coated with this. Going to make a 50-50 mix of first light and first base that we used previously, and this is going to be really thin paint. This mix will be added to the bridge of the nose, cheeks, top of the chin, the brow, and to the tips of the ears. Next, we're going to be doing the same thing with straight first light, but on a smaller area. So all the parts we hit previously, just, not as big of an area. I'm going to take a 50-50 mix of first light and second light and hit the same areas again, but again on a smaller scale. Then using just straight second light, I'm going to use this just for the tip of the nose. Going to make up a 50-50 mix of second shadow with first base. This is going to go inside the ears, eye sockets, and cheek hollows. This being a soft dragon figure, this is all I will do to them. If it was a high quality resin figure, I would add just as many shadows as I did highlights. The uniforms are painted in Vallejo filled gray. The highlights are made with around 25% of that first base and first highlight mixture right above it on the red palette. It might seem a little too bright going on wet, but once it dries it looks really good. All of the buttons and buckles are painted with Vallejo light gray. And here we have all 3 figures painted up. The hands was painted the same way as the faces were. Now that they are painted, we can super glue the oars into place. And then super glue the 2 oarsmen into place on the raft. Then using a very good amount of super glue, I'll attach the raft to the styrene tube. I had dry fitted it on here a couple times, so I knew pretty much where the balance point was on it. Now to finally get started on the water, I'm using Amazing Clear Cast Plus tinted with Vallejo Gray Green. When you pour this, you want to pour it down your mixing stick and not straight into the area. This is to keep bubbles from forming. Also, try not to pour in one area. Go around the base a little bit. It took 3 different pours, rating 4 hours between each to complete the entire water base, since you can only do between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch at a time. As I'm waiting for the resin to cure, I'm gonna make scale leaves using this punch from Green Stuff World. Just stick a leaf in and punch out some 1/35 scale leaves. Then do that about a few dozen times to have enough that I need for the diorama. I'm gonna take this Vallejo Thick mud and coat the entire bank with it. It also works good as glue to hold down heavy objects like this rock onto your base. Using this mix of ground scatter that I picked up at a model show a few years back, so I'm not really sure what company made this or if it was just some guy selling his own product there. I'll add this in patchy areas of the bank since I still want a lot of that Vallejo mud showing through. Adding the leaves that we made earlier with our punch set. Now remember, leaves will collect in corners and crevices of rocks. Just kind of go outside and look around to see where dirt and leaves collect at. Where I got everything where I pretty much like it, I'm going to use some of that scenic glue again to lock everything in place. I wanted some tall grass growing around the bigger rocks. For that, I'm taking this cheap paintbrush that was only 99 cents from Harbor Freight, and cutting the bristles off and super gluing them into place. I think the end result looks really good, just proving you don't need to spend a lot of money on purpose-built scenic products. Just one paintbrush alone would probably be enough to do several dioramas. And if you don't like the color of them, you can always paint them to make them, green or a darker yellow. The way the water is now, it's way too still and calm, so I'm going to be using gloss Mod Podge to create ripples onto the surface of the water. Working small sections at a time, just stipple it on with a brush and then take a drinking straw and just blow it to create ripples. Just keep working small sections at a time until the entire base is done. This stuff actually dries pretty quickly, so you do need to work in small sections. After the Mod Podge is dried, it's time to add the third figure, and then go over to the final shots. Here she is complete. I'm really happy with her. I wanted a small build to do. Really didn't feel like digging out a big kit and starting a big project at the moment. Altogether, I got about 4 days work into this. A lot of that time was just waiting for the resin to dry. And if I can catch a day that it's not raining outside, I need to go out and sand and stain the oak around the base. I hope you guys enjoyed this build and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and be looking for many more build videos to come.